You've heard someone say it at every summer barbecue. Mosquitoes love me. I must have sweet blood. They never touch my husband, but they eat me alive. For years, that sounded like nothing more than a family joke, the kind of thing people say because they can't explain why one person walks away covered in bites while the person standing right next to them doesn't get touched. But scientists who started digging into why mosquitoes choose one person over another found something that goes far deeper than luck. It's written into your DNA. It's tied to your blood type, your genetics, and even the bacteria living on your skin right now. And the answer isn't just interesting trivia. It's a window into how your body chemistry works, whether you realize it or not. So let's start with the claim itself, because it's the one everybody has heard, but almost nobody has actually tested. Some people really do get bitten more than others, and it isn't random. Researchers have measured it directly by letting mosquitoes choose between different people in controlled settings, and the results aren't close. Some individuals get landed on and bitten far more often than others, exposed to the exact same insects, in the exact same room, at the exact same time. That rules out the easy explanations. It's not about standing in a worse spot in the yard. It's not about wearing the wrong color shirt. Something about certain people is genuinely more attractive to a mosquito's senses, and that something starts with how the insect finds you in the first place. A mosquito doesn't see you the way you'd expect. It's not scanning the world visually and picking the best-looking target. It's following a chemical trail. Female mosquitoes, the only ones that bite, because they need protein from blood to develop their eggs, are guided by an extraordinarily sensitive sense of smell. The first thing that gets their attention from a distance is carbon dioxide, the gas every one of us breathes out with every exhale. Mosquitoes can detect it from many meters away, and it's often the first clue that tells them a living, breathing target is somewhere nearby. People who simply exhale more carbon dioxide, larger individuals, pregnant women, people who are exercising or breathing heavily, tend to draw more attention for exactly this reason. It's one of the clearest and most consistently replicated findings in mosquito research. But carbon dioxide only gets a mosquito in the general area. Once it's close, it needs something more specific to zero in on an actual person, and that's where things get personal. Human skin doesn't just carry sweat. It carries an entire cocktail of chemical compounds produced by the body and by the bacteria living on it, and every person's mix is slightly different. That mix is your chemical signature, as unique to you as a fingerprint. And it turns out, mosquitoes read it with remarkable precision. This is where the skin microbiome enters the story, and it's one of the more surprising discoveries in this whole field. Researchers studying malaria mosquitoes found that the specific mix of bacteria living on a person's skin, particularly on the feet, has a measurable effect on how attractive that person is to a biting insect. In one study, people with a lower diversity of skin bacteria, but a higher concentration of a few dominant bacterial species, were significantly more attractive to mosquitoes than people whose skin carried a broader, more balanced bacterial community. That's a strange thing to sit with. The mosquito isn't just reacting to you. It's reacting to an entire ecosystem of microorganisms living on your body. An ecosystem that's partly shaped by your genetics, partly shaped by your environment, and different for almost everyone. That helps explain individual variation, but it doesn't explain why the pattern shows up so consistently within families. And this is where the story turns toward genetics directly. Scientists studying identical and non-identical twins set out to answer a very specific question. Is mosquito attractiveness something you're born with, or is it shaped entirely by circumstance? The logic behind a twin study is elegant. Identical twins share effectively all of their DNA, while non-identical twins share only about half, the same as any other siblings. If a trait shows up as far more similar between identical twins than between non-identical twins, that's strong evidence the trait has a genetic basis rather than being explained by environment alone. When researchers ran this exact experiment with mosquito attraction, letting mosquitoes choose between the hands of twin pairs, They found identical twins were rated as similarly attractive to mosquitoes far more often than non-identical twins were. The heritability estimate that came out of that research was strikingly high, in the same range scientists usually associate with strongly inherited physical traits. In plain terms, whether mosquitoes find you delicious isn't just about what soap you used or what you ate for lunch. A meaningful part of it is written into your genes, inherited the same way your eye color or your height gets passed down. Now here's where blood type comes into the picture, and this is the part people always want to know, because it feels like it should be the simplest explanation of all. Are certain blood types just more attractive to mosquitoes? The honest answer is more complicated than a headline can capture, but there is real research behind it. One frequently cited study tested how mosquitoes responded to people of different ABO blood types and found that individuals with type O blood were landed on significantly more often than people with type A. Type B fell somewhere in between. That result got a lot of attention, and it lines up with something a lot of people already suspected about themselves. But it's important to be careful here, because this was one study using a specific mosquito species in a controlled lab setting, and follow-up research hasn't always replicated the exact same pattern with different mosquito species or in real-world conditions. The mainstream scientific view isn't that blood type by itself makes you a mosquito magnet. It's that blood type is tangled up with something else entirely, something that turns out to matter far more. That something is called secretor status, and it might be the single most underappreciated piece of this entire puzzle. Here's the background you need. Your blood type isn't only expressed on your red blood cells. For roughly 80% of people, those same blood type antigens, the molecular markers that define whether you're A, B, AB, or O, also get secreted into other bodily fluids: saliva, sweat, and mucus. Those people are called secretors. The remaining fraction of the population, roughly 20%, carry a genetic variation that prevents this secretion, and they're called non-secretors. Whether you're a secretor or not is determined by a specific gene, and it's entirely separate from which blood type letter you carry. You could be type O and a secretor, or type O and a non-secretor, and those two people would present very different chemical signals on their skin, even though their blood type on paper looks identical. Multiple studies looking specifically at mosquito attraction have found that secretor status matters more consistently than blood type alone. People who secrete their blood type antigens into their sweat tend to be more attractive to mosquitoes than non-secretors, regardless of which letter their blood type happens to be. That reframes the whole question. It's not really, does type O attract mosquitoes? It's closer to, does your body broadcast extra chemical information onto your skin, and if it does, mosquitoes are picking up on it. Since type O individuals are more likely, on average, to also be secretors, some of the original blood type findings may actually be capturing this secretor effect indirectly, rather than blood type itself being the direct cause. Scientists studying this are still working out exactly how much of the effect belongs to blood type, how much belongs to secretor status, and how much comes from the deeper layer of body odor chemistry sitting underneath both of them. And that body odor chemistry is its own fascinating rabbit hole. Human sweat contains hundreds of different volatile compounds, and mosquitoes have receptors tuned to detect many of them at concentrations far too faint for a human nose to notice. Certain fatty acids on the skin, lactic acid produced during exercise, ammonia, and specific compounds tied to the breakdown of sweat by skin bacteria all play a role in how attractive a person smells to a mosquito. This is part of why people who have just finished exercising tend to get bitten more. They're producing more carbon dioxide, more heat, more lactic acid, and more sweat, all stacking together into a stronger signal. It's also part of why pregnant women are consistently found to be more attractive to mosquitoes in research settings. Pregnancy increases body temperature slightly and increases carbon dioxide output because a pregnant woman is, quite literally, breathing for two, which is a serious concern in regions where mosquito-borne diseases like malaria are common, since pregnant women may face higher exposure risk at exactly the moment when infection poses the greatest danger. Body heat plays its own separate role too. Mosquitoes have specialized sensors that detect infrared heat signatures at close range, which helps them find exposed skin once they're within striking distance. People who run warmer, whether due to metabolism, body composition, or simply having just come in from the heat, present a slightly stronger thermal target. None of these factors work alone. A mosquito's decision to land on one person over another is built from a stack of overlapping signals: carbon dioxide from a distance, body heat, and visual movement at medium range, and that highly specific chemical fingerprint made up of skin bacteria byproducts, sweat compounds, and, for secretors, blood-type antigens once it gets close enough to make a final decision. There's also a genetic angle tied to a completely different gene that shapes how strong a person's natural body odor is in the first place, independent of mosquitoes entirely. A gene called ABCC11 controls a trait most people have never heard of: whether your sweat glands produce the type of secretions associated with stronger body odor at all. A specific variant of this gene, more common in East Asian populations, is linked to drier earwax and significantly less body odor overall, while other variants are linked to the wetter earwax and stronger scent output found in most of the rest of the world. Researchers studying mosquito attraction have started looking at whether variations in genes like this one, which shape the raw material of human scent, ripple downstream into how detectable a person is to a mosquito's nose. It's early research, and nobody is claiming this single gene explains everything, but it fits the broader pattern this whole field keeps circling back to. Mosquito attraction isn't one trait. It's the sum of several separate genetic and biological systems, all feeding into the same outcome. Diet gets brought up constantly in casual conversation. The idea that eating garlic, taking vitamin B, or avoiding bananas changes how attractive you are to mosquitoes. The scientific support for most of these specific claims is thin at best. Alcohol is the one dietary factor that has held up reasonably well across multiple studies. People who have recently consumed beer tend to be somewhat more attractive to mosquitoes shortly afterward, likely tied to a small rise in body temperature and changes in sweat composition, though the effect size in these studies is modest rather than dramatic. Most of the other food-based folk remedies people swear by haven't held up under controlled testing, which is worth knowing before anyone changes their diet expecting it to solve a bug bite problem. Zooming out, there's a bigger evolutionary question underneath all of this. If certain genetic traits make some people more attractive targets for disease-carrying insects, why would evolution have allowed those traits to stick around at all? This connects back to something researchers have found when they study blood type frequencies in regions with a long history of mosquito-borne disease. In parts of the world where malaria has shaped human populations for thousands of years, certain blood-related genetic traits show up at unusual frequencies, not because they attract mosquitoes more, but because they offer some protection once an infected bite actually happens. One of the clearest examples involves a different blood group system entirely, called the Duffy blood group, rather than the ABO system most people are familiar with. A specific version of a malaria parasite relies on a particular protein on red blood cells to gain entry into the cell, and across large parts of Africa, populations carry a genetic variant that removes that exact protein from their red blood cells. People with this variant are effectively resistant to that particular form of malaria because the parasite has no way to get inside their cells even after a mosquito delivers it directly into their bloodstream. That trait became extraordinarily common across parts of the continent over thousands of years for the simplest evolutionary reason there is. People who carried it were more likely to survive malaria, more likely to have children, and more likely to pass that protection forward. It's a striking reminder that the story of blood type and mosquitoes isn't only about who gets bitten, it's also about who survives the bite. And those turn out to be two very different questions, shaped by two very different pieces of genetic code. Taken together, this research paints a much richer picture than the old barbecue joke ever captured. Whether a mosquito chooses you isn't superstition, and it isn't random bad luck either. It's the end result of a layered chain of biology. how much carbon dioxide you exhale, how warm your skin runs, which bacteria happen to be living on your feet and ankles, whether your particular version of a specific gene makes you a secretor who broadcasts blood-type antigens through your sweat, and underneath all of that, inherited genetic variation that twin studies suggest you were simply born with, the same way you were born with your eye color or your blood type itself. Some of these threads are backed by decades of consistent, repeated research. Others, like the exact role of ABO blood type on its own, are still being untangled from the more powerful signal of secretor status sitting right alongside it. And scientists studying this openly acknowledge there's more work to do before every piece fits together with full certainty. What isn't in question is the bigger takeaway. Your blood carries more information than a letter on a donor card. It's tangled up with your skin chemistry, your inherited genetics, and even your evolutionary history in ways that quietly shape something as small and as universal as a mosquito landing on your arm on a summer evening. The next time someone insists mosquitoes love them more than anyone else at the table, they might be closer to the truth than they realize. It isn't sweeter blood. It's a genetic signature written in carbon dioxide, sweat, skin bacteria, and sometimes, quite literally, the blood type sitting inside every cell of their body. So if you've ever wondered why you're the one covered in bites while everyone else walks away untouched, the answer isn't in your head. It's in your DNA. And somewhere in a lab right now, researchers are still working out exactly how deep that signature runs. What's your blood type? And does this explain why mosquitoes always seem to find you first? Drop it in the comments.